I want to talk about books. I want to talk about e-books and printed books. And Professor Anton and Conference Report have been talking about books, particularly focusing on printed books and their contrast with mediums like YouTube. I want to add another dimension to the discussion if I can entice them or anyone else who might happen to view this video. And that dimension is the contrast between the printed book and the e-book. I'm going to, in hopes to generate some discussion along those lines, I'm going to affix this video to Professor Anton's Impatience, Study, and Self-Transformation video, as well as Conference Report's video, How Many Books Are Enough? I'd like to see a discussion generated about the differences between electronic books and paper books. What is gained and lost in the emergence of the electronic book. Now, I have some thoughts along these lines, and I'm not sure that they congeal well at this point, but I'm trying to flesh out some thoughts I've been having about electronic books and see what people have to say about it. Now, consider printed books. Although future editions of a printed book may be altered, a printed copy of a book cannot be altered. Now, I just happened to pick up here in my office a copy of an anthology of poems. Although future editions of this book could perhaps add poems or remove some poems from the list, this particular copy, the one I possess, cannot be altered. But unless I download an e-book can be altered conceivably without my knowing about it. I find that fascinating. I find it fascinating that that fact, as well as the visual format of the electronic book, adds an ethereality and impermanence to the signification of a work that the printed word doesn't seem to possess. It seems as if signification gains permanence when the format for conveying it has a high degree of stasis. Conversely, about those facts, it could also be said that an e-book possesses a dynamism that a printed work lacks. A printed book lacks kind of dynamic quality about it. An e-book has the potential to be a work perpetually in progress, and when I think of works perpetually in progress in electronic format, I think immediately of Wikipedia articles. They're perpetually in progress, or at least in theory they are. And actually is one of the things that I happen to like about Wikipedia articles, is that yes, there's a high frequency rate of errors in Wikipedia articles, but it seems to me there's a high frequency rate of correction of those errors in Wikipedia articles as well, because of the kind of format. One time I was teaching a class about a book, and I mentioned, or rather I was teaching a class and I mentioned a book that I didn't have with me, and a student was able to access it online within a few minutes. I found the passage that I was trying to recall verbatim, and he was able to pull it up. Now, I thought that was really quite fascinating, that kind of instantaneous access to a book within a classroom setting. It seems to me, assuming there is no failure in the technology, an e-book is more readily accessible than a printed book is. To obtain a copy of a printed book, I would in order for the purposes of this class discussion, afterwards I would have to either order it or get a copy from a library or from an acquaintance. Now, it seems to me while there might be a temptation to mystify waiting and patience in waiting, I see no virtue in waiting when it's not necessary. There's a way in which ebooks have the potential to make waiting for accessing books unnecessary, which I think is fascinating. Now, I said, of course, assuming there's no failure in the technology, an ebook is more readily accessible. But what if there is a failure in technology? Let's imagine a colossal failure, which eliminates irrevocably multiple copies of books online, wherever they are stored. Unless some individuals have downloaded those copies, and those individuals are discoverable, many volumes of ebooks could be lost permanently. Now consider, on the other hand, in contrast, a fire in a library. Multiple volumes can be lost, but other volumes of those books exist elsewhere, in other libraries, for example. Ebooks not only seem more impermanent, as I discussed before, but they are potentially more vulnerable to long-term, or even, as to coin a phrase, permanent impermanence. And I don't see a particular virtue in that state of affairs. And finally, and this might be a kind of idiosyncratic observation, and as such maybe it only applies to me, but it seems to me that the visual presentation of the text in the ebook has the quality of being flattened, as if there is no differentiation between the text in the white space that surrounds and invades it. Whereas in a printed copy of a book, the text, albeit minutely, appears to be grafted onto the white space. The text of a printed book has a structure that an e-book lacks. Again, it appears as if the e-book just has a kind of ethereality about it that the printed book doesn't, even in its appearance. So these are just some thoughts. They probably don't mean a great deal, but just some thoughts I've been having about this transition that's being made from the printed page to the electronic page, and be interested in see what people think about it. Thanks.